9 false gods, 1 people. A pattern that didn't start with Israel and didn't end with them either. Every god they chased, what it promised, who believed it, and why God was furious. 1. Baal. Israel wasn't forgetting about God. What was happening was more subtle and more dangerous. The people had simply reached the conclusion that God needed a business partner for the practical side of life. Baal was the Canaanite god of rain and harvest. In the ancient world, that wasn't a religious question, it was a survival question. No rain meant no crop. No crop meant no food. No food meant your children died. So when the neighboring peoples said Baal controlled the weather, Israel didn't hear that as an invitation to idolatry. They heard it as a practical solution for keeping the family alive, and went after it. The problem wasn't that Israel was replacing God with Baal. It was that they were trying to hold both at the same time. God for the eternal, spiritual things, Baal for the daily, concrete things, the things that depended on rain and good soil. This reveals something important. Idolatry almost never arrives as a straight substitution. It arrives offering to fill a gap. God's answer left no room for ambiguity. On Mount Carmel, 450 prophets of Baal spent an entire day screaming, dancing, and cutting themselves with blades, begging for a sign. The result was complete silence. Then Elijah prayed once, a single prayer, and fire came down from the sky and consumed the sacrifice, the altar, the stones, and even the water that had been poured into the trench around it. That's in 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 21 through 38. Baal didn't answer because he had nothing to offer. He never did. And God was furious because Israel had taken everything he had given them, the rain, the harvest, the children born healthy, and carried their gratitude to the feet of something that had never done a single thing for them. Every time we trust God with the big things, but look somewhere else for the practical answers, we may be running the exact same calculation Israel ran. 2. The Queen of Heaven. Unlike most of Israel's idols, this one didn't live in a temple. It lived inside the house, in the daily rhythm of the family. In the kitchen, the children gathered the firewood, the father lit the fire, the mother kneaded the dough and shaped the loaves in the image of this goddess. The entire family gathered around the same fire, generation after generation. The Queen of Heaven, a goddess known across the ancient world under different names, likely connected to the same figure worshipped as Ishtar in Babylon and Astarte in Canaan, promised blessing over the home, protection in marriage, and healthy children. She was so woven into the daily life of Judah that confronting this idol was the same as confronting the family itself. When Jeremiah brought the word of God, the people didn't lower their heads in shame. They pushed back with total conviction. In Jeremiah chapter 44, verses 17 and 18, they said clearly, "When we burned offerings to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to her, we had plenty of food and prospered and saw no disaster. But since we stopped, we have lacked everything and have been consumed by sword and famine." They had memory, they had an argument, they had the family tradition entirely on their side, and they were completely wrong about what was actually causing it, with no awareness of that at all. God was furious because these people were hearing the truth from a prophet and chose to stay with the tradition, with genuine conviction, with closed hearts. Reflective. The hardest idol to release is never the one that looks obviously wrong. It's the one that arrived wrapped in the memory of someone we respected, the smell of the home where we grew up, the way things were always done. That one stays. Before the next one, if you think understanding what the Bible actually says makes a difference, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and drop a like. It tells YouTube to put this in front of more people who need to see it. Let's keep going. 3. The Golden Calf. If there is one sin in Israel's history with no possible excuse, it is this one. The people had just crossed the Red Sea on dry ground, with walls of water on both sides. They had heard God's voice at Mount Sinai so intensely that they begged Moses to make it stop. They couldn't take it anymore. Then Moses went up the mountain to receive the law. 40 days later, 40 days, the people had melted down their own gold jewelry, cast a calf, and declared, as recorded in Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 4, that this was the God who had brought them out of Egypt. A statue made that afternoon called their deliverer from that same morning. 40 days was all it took for the greatest miracle those people had ever witnessed to start feeling like something that happened long ago. And what they wanted wasn't exactly a different God. They wanted a God they could see, one that was present, one that didn't disappear into the top of a mountain wrapped in fire and cloud without explanation. What makes this episode even more striking is what happened centuries later. Jeroboam, the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel, did the exact same thing. He erected 2 golden calves and spoke the exact same words, word for word. That's in 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28. As if history couldn't believe someone had copied the same mistake on purpose and made it the official religion of the kingdom. Reflective. Every time we quietly reshape our image of God into something that demands less, offends less, and fits more comfortably inside the life we've already decided to live, it is essentially the same calf with a different name. 4. Chemosh. Chemosh was the national god of Moab, a war deity, the supreme being to whom Moabite kings attributed every battlefield victory and blamed for every defeat. We know Chemosh existed as a cultural force, not just from the Bible, but from the Mesa Stele, an actual stone inscription from the 9th century BC, discovered in 1868, written by a Moabite king boasting about his victories and crediting Chemosh by name. One of the oldest extra-biblical confirmations of the world the Bible describes. Somber. But Chemosh didn't enter Israel through the back door. He didn't arrive hidden among foreign infiltrators. He came through the front door, built with the authorization of the man who had constructed God's own temple. Solomon ordered an altar to Chemosh built on the hill east of Jerusalem. That's in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 7. And the detail that matters is this: that altar was not torn down when Solomon died. It stayed standing, visible from the city, on the eastern skyline of Jerusalem. 300 years, until King Josiah finally demolished it, as recorded in 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 13. 300 years, entire generations of kings in Jerusalem, looking east every day and seeing on the horizon an altar to a foreign god, built by the most glorious king Israel ever had. Reflective. What a leader builds or simply allows to remain standing doesn't disappear when they die. It stays there. It keeps being seen. It keeps shaping every generation that follows. 5. Baal-Zebub. Baal-Zebub was the god of the Philistines in the city of Ekron. The name said everything: Lord of the Flies, a deity credited with power over disease and pestilence, to whom people traveled to ask whether they would survive an illness. This same Baal-Zebub is the being the New Testament calls Baal-Zebub, identified as a prince among demons. The name that began as a local Philistine deity became a title for something far darker. Yet this is exactly the God a king of Israel chose to consult at the most vulnerable moment of his life. King Ahaziah, son of Ahab and Jezebel, raised in a household where God's power had been demonstrated in ways impossible to ignore, fell through the lattice of his upper room and was seriously injured. Instead of seeking the God of Israel, he sent messengers to Ekron to consult the Lord of the Flies.
God sent Elijah to intercept those messengers on the road. The question Elijah asked is recorded in 2 Kings chapter 1 verses 2 through 4, and it appears 3 times in the same chapter. Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to consult Baal-Zebub, the lord of the Philistines in Ekron? He prophesied Ahaziah's death, and Ahaziah died exactly as Elijah said. He wasn't ignorant. He had grown up seeing too much to claim ignorance, but in the moment when life became genuinely uncertain and he needed a real answer, he concluded that the God of Israel might not be sufficient for this particular situation. Reflective, what we run to when we are desperate tends to reveal what we actually believe, not just what we say when everything is fine.
6. Dagon. Dagon was the great god of the Philistines, the symbol of their national power, the god they praised the day they captured Samson, and the god who received the credit when the Philistines seized the Ark of the Covenant in battle and brought it into his temple in Ashdod as a war trophy. The statement was clear: their god had defeated the God of Israel. They placed the ark in front of Dagon and went home. The next morning, when the priest opened the temple, Dagon was face down on the ground, prostrate before the ark. They stood him back up. The morning after that, face down again, but this time his head and both arms had been severed and were lying on the threshold. Only the torso remained. That's in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verses 2 through 4. The text records that from that point on, the priests of Dagon would not step on the threshold of that temple, a practice that continued for generations, a permanent reminder carved into the ritual life of the people who worshipped him. God didn't send a prophet, didn't call fire from the sky. He simply waited for the night and in complete silence, with no witness at all, made his point, twice. Then came the plagues across every Philistine city the ark was moved to, until the Philistines loaded it onto a cart with offerings of gold and sent it back to Israel as fast as they could. The God who had supposedly defeated the God of Israel was lying headless on the floor of his own temple. 7. Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth was the great goddess of fertility, love, and war, present among every people from whom Israel had been specifically told to keep its distance. And the man who fell before her was not weak, was not ignorant, was not a pagan. It was Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, to whom God had appeared personally not once, but twice. Solomon married foreign women, women from the nations about whom God had warned Israel directly that they would turn the heart of the people. And as Solomon grew older, his heart was turned, quietly, gradually. He built an altar to Ashtoreth on the hill east of Jerusalem, the same hill the scriptures would later call the hill of corruption. That's in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 5 through 9. And what the biblical text specifically identifies as the cause of God's fury is precise. He had appeared to Solomon twice, and Solomon turned away anyway. This means that knowing a great deal about God is not protection. Having lived deep spiritual experiences is not protection. Having built great things for God is not protection. The only thing that actually guards the heart is tending it every single day in the small decisions, long before the large ones arrive.
8. Asherah. Asherah was the Canaanite mother goddess, and her presence across Israel was marked by wooden poles, carved posts erected on hilltops and under trees throughout the land, meeting points for rituals the Bible consistently connects to sexual immorality. The Asherah poles were everywhere. They appear more than 40 times in the Old Testament. Cutting them down became practically a job requirement for the few kings the Bible actually praises. But Asherah didn't stay on the hills. She kept moving toward the center. King Manasseh, considered the most wicked king in all of Judah's history, took a carved image of Asherah and installed it inside the temple of God in Jerusalem. Not the outer court, not near the entrance. Inside, in the same space where the glory of God had descended as fire on the day the temple was dedicated. That's in 2 Kings chapter 21, verse 7. God was furious because the place he had chosen to meet his people had become unrecognizable. Sin has that movement. It never stays quiet at the edges of a life. It always walks toward the center, toward what was meant to be sacred, toward what was supposed to belong only to God. And almost always, we only notice when it has already arrived.
Molech. Unlike every other false god on this list, Molech didn't promise anything. That was worse. He demanded. He was the god of the Ammonites, and what he demanded was the most precious and most irreversible thing anyone could offer: living children. The statue was bronze, heated from within until it glowed. Its outstretched arms received those who were sacrificed, and drums were beaten loudly, deliberately, to cover the sound of the crying. This happened in the Valley of Hinnom, just outside the walls of Jerusalem, minutes from the temple where God's presence dwelled. And the people doing this were not foreigners who had never heard of God. They were Israelites, people who knew the law. King Ahaz, king of Judah, the kingdom where God's temple stood, burned his own child as an offering. That's in 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 3.
And God's response in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31, is unlike anything else he says anywhere in the Bible. He states that this had never even entered his mind. Of everything God knew about the human heart's capacity to go wrong, this was beyond it. This was the limit. The Valley of Hinnom was so marked by this horror that in later Hebrew it became Gehinnom, Gehenna. The word Jesus uses every single time he speaks of hell. Hell got its name from the place where Israel burned innocent children for a god that never existed. And God's fury over Molech was not only holy wrath, it was the grief of a father, watching his own people destroy their children, innocent lives with no voice and no choice, and call it devotion.
Every one of these gods promised something only God can actually give, or demanded something only he deserves to receive. Israel was a people who had witnessed impossible miracles, who held the law in their hands and had prophets at their door, and they went after all of them. This is not just ancient history, it is a mirror. The question it holds up is not whether we worship statues, it's what we turn to when we need rain. What we protect because our family always protected it. What image of God we've quietly reshaped to be less demanding. What we run to when we're desperate. And how far from the center we've allowed things to move without noticing. If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen in the Bible before, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a like and subscribe if you aren't already. See you in the next one.